Good evening. Thank you for joining. We're still having folks join at this moment, so we're going to give it another minute or two. Good evening, everyone. We have not started yet. We'll be starting shortly. We have a number of people still joining. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. I know that there are some folks that are still joining, but for an interest of time, we're gonna move along. Next slide, please. So before we begin, we are offering American Sign Language interpretation and closed captioning for tonight's event. To access the ASL interpretation, please find the videos for the ASL interpreters within the panelists section. They're listed as ASL interpreters followed by their name. Once you find them, you can lock or pin their video to your screen so that you can see them throughout the presentation. To access closed captioning, on the bottom right corner of the screen, there's a multimedia box. Click on that box. You will then see the CC Start option. You can select the language, font size, and color that best meets your needs. At this time, all members of the public joining the conversation are muted and will remain muted until the comment period at the end of the formal presentation. Next slide. So we want to thank you for joining us tonight. We're really excited to be here with you to share information about recent, current, and planned activities related to the self-direction model of service delivery that OPWDD provides. OPWDD believes self-direction is a very important topic and wants to make sure that we are providing opportunities for stakeholders to continue to hear about and weigh in on our efforts. We know that you are the ones that are self-directing, helping others to self-direct, and implementing the program across the state. So it's important for us to work together to move the program forward and make sure it is meeting its intended goals and helping people with disabilities live their best lives. Next slide. In keeping with our interest to make sure stakeholders are informed about our efforts and able to weigh in, tonight's webinar will include a brief overview of stakeholder input that OPWDD has received over the past few years related to self-direction, recent and current activities that OPWDD has undertaken in response to stakeholder input, and future and planned efforts, including an American Rescue Plan funded self-direction evaluation. At the end of the formal presentation, time will be left for participants to provide comments for up to 2 minutes. We have a lot of people on the call this evening, so it is unlikely that everyone who would like to speak will get the opportunity to. Therefore, we strongly encourage participants to share comments within the chat box during or following the presentation and/or in writing after the webinar. You're also welcome to put questions in the chat box or send them via email, but please note, given the number of participants on the call tonight, we will not be able to answer questions during the event itself. This webinar is also being recorded and will be shared on the OPWDD website by early next week. An announcement will go out once it is posted on the website. We'll be reviewing and analyzing all comments and questions that are shared in writing following tonight's presentation. It's also worth noting that this is just one opportunity of many in the coming months to provide feedback to OPWDD. As part of our 507 strategic planning process, there will be statewide public hearings and regional in-person forums throughout the summer where you can share input on the self-direction service delivery model and other programs and services. Next slide, please. As part of OPWDD's efforts to involve stakeholders in our planning and policy decisions, we have already engaged stakeholders in various ways to hear about experiences, suggestions, concerns, and promising practices related to our self-direction service model. Next slide. Some of these efforts include receiving technical assistance provided by the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, also known as CMS, reviewing input and recommendations from self-advocates, family members, providers, FIs, and CCOs, holding multiple meetings and conversations with various self-direction specific stakeholder groups, and collecting input through our 507 strategic planning process, which took place in the spring and summer of 2021. Next slide. Based on these various opportunities to engage with and receive thoughts from stakeholders and the CMS consultant, OPWDD heard that we need to consider improving access to the self-direction model, increasing the program's flexibility, streamlining the administrative processes, better coordinating care and services, and expanding opportunities and efforts around sustainability of the larger model itself and for individuals and families that may have aging caregivers or lack a strong support network. Next slide. In alignment with the broader themes identified, many stakeholders and the technical assistant shared specific suggestions and examples, including recommendations to provide more flexibility in what funds can be used for and to modify budgeting rules, to create clearer and more consistent information, processes, and decisions, to develop more tools for families and self-advocates to help with administration, to simplify administration, to train CCOs and care managers on self-direction, including how to better support brokers, families, and individuals using the program, to explore the use of enhanced brokering to provide more support, to increase rent support, subsidies, and housing payment standards, and to increase access to self-direction for underrepresented groups. Additionally, stakeholders have shared more detailed program recommendations, for example, creating one-time funds, drafting a single self-hired staff definition, and expanding and enhancing broker training and certificates. Next slide. OPWDD understands the importance of continuously evaluating our program and service models to make sure they are meeting the intent of the program and needs of those we support. And we agree that there may be some opportunities to improve the self-direction model. Therefore, we have mapped out various activities OPWDD has, is, or will be engaging in response to the feedback received, which I'll be sharing in the next few slides. Thank you. So one of the technical assistance recommendations was to address compliance issues with independent brokers, potentially eliminating that option in favor of agency brokers being exclusive. OPWDD heard from many stakeholders that they would prefer to maintain the independent broker option. Instead of eliminating that choice, a new system called Central Broker Authorization and Review was put in place. It was also recommended that OPWDD reduce the required face-to-face meetings. In 2019, OPWDD did change the required minimum annual meetings from 4 to 2 meetings in response to that suggestion. Additionally, in 2019, OPWDD put a support broker mentorship program in place. We also shifted the support broker trainings to a web-based format in 2020 based on recommendations received. And recently in 2021, telehealth guidance was issued, which has provided additional flexibilities for remotely delivering support brokerage and other self-directed services. Next slide. OPWDD has also been working to update our housing payment standards and restructure the administrative reimbursement, which will include administration for housing subsidies managed by the FIs. Additionally, policy and rule updates are ongoing to clarify confusing aspects of the self-direction model to address some of the issues stakeholders have shared. And we are evaluating our data collection, analysis, and research related to self-direction utilization. Next slide. Stakeholders have repeatedly shared that they would like OPWDD to streamline the budget process. In response to that recommendation, OPWDD is making improvements to the review process and has hired staff to help facilitate fiscal approvals. OPWDD is also in the process of evaluating our budget practices, and we plan to create better templates and explore online platforms which will help automate and improve implementation. Currently, OPWDD is participating in a national self-direction learning collaborative in collaboration with people self-directing, family members, and providers to work together with self-direction experts from around the country to examine best practices and sharing information about self-direction. Additionally, OPWDD is providing web-based initial broker trainings, and we have created on-demand refreshers to assist experienced brokers with a detailed review of self-direction budgets. OPWDD is also reviewing ways to better leverage broker mentorships and communities of practice for authorized support brokers. Lastly, we're working to establish multicultural support programs to increase engagement and access of self-direction to underserved and more diverse communities. Next slide. In addition to recent and current activities, OPWDD has begun to outline future and planned activities that again are based on stakeholder input and technical assistance received through CMS. Next slide. Some of these future and planned activities include exploring opportunities to improve the IT infrastructure around self-direction. For example, the technical assistant consultant recommended OPWDD create a web-based portal to improve managing information in and around self-direction budgets. We're also planning to update a variety of rules and policies to simplify the process and administration. Similarly, we would like to create opportunities for improved data collection, analysis, and research to 1, improve self-direction overall, and 2, better understand future needs and program sustainability. Lastly, OPWDD will be funding an external expert to do a comprehensive review of the program to help develop recommendations for improving self-direction in New York State. Next slide. OPWDD considers the evaluation to be a key activity to help us meet the requests of stakeholders and build on the already valuable input that has been received up to this point. The goal of the evaluation is to expand on prior research and stakeholder input by conducting a formal, comprehensive assessment and analysis that will include engagement of a diverse set of stakeholders and result in recommendations and actions that address efficiencies and inefficiencies in the current model, including looking at inconsistencies in implementation and information shared, promising practices that are happening in New York and in other states, personal outcomes reached or not reached by those self-directing, accessibility and equity of the model, including better meeting the needs of underserved communities, and the model sustainability, both for individuals with aging caregivers and at the systems level overall. OPWDD expects recommendations will be informed by organized and formal research-based engagement of a broad group of stakeholders, including individuals enrolled in self-direction, families, and natural supports representing the geographic and demographic diversity of the state, as well as FI staff, support brokers, care managers, and OPWDD staff. As we noted in previous slides, there's still much to be done at OPWDD to advance our self-direction model. We consider the evaluation to be a fundamental step in our efforts and overall progress to improve the program. Next slide. This concludes the presentation part of this evening's meeting. At this point, we will share information about how you can submit comments in writing, and we will then open the meeting for oral remarks. Next slide. Thank you. We welcome your written feedback on activities discussed in tonight's presentation through May 27, 2022. Please submit written feedback to the Office of Strategic Initiatives at opwdd.sm.osi@opwdd.newyork.gov. In the subject of your email, please reference self-direction webinar. As previously noted, a recording of this presentation will be available next week. We will send a formal announcement, including the direct link to where the recording will be posted on the website, and a reminder about the opportunity to share written feedback via email. So again, the email is opwdd.sm.osi@opwdd.newyork.gov, and we're accepting written comments until May 27, 2022. Please include in your subject line, self-direction webinar. Next slide. We will now open the meeting for spoken comments. As a reminder, we have many people participating in the call this evening and will not be able to answer questions at this time. We will also not have enough time to get to everyone that would like to speak, but we know many of you have very important messages, thoughts, and comments to share with us. So we encourage you to submit your thoughts in the chat box and/or to the OSI planning email that I just shared. So to hear from as many people as possible tonight, we ask those of you that are called on to speak to keep your comments to 2 minutes or less. We will provide a timer. If you wish to make a comment, please raise your virtual WebEx hand now. Josie will call a person's name and unmute them. At the end of the 2-minute period, I will let you know that your time is up and you will be placed back on mute. Josie will then call on the next speaker and unmute them. We will repeat these steps until close to 8 p.m., leaving only a few minutes for a quick conclusion at the end. So Josie, please unmute and call on our first speaker.
Lori, you're unmuted. You may begin speaking. Okay, we'll move on to the next. Michelle, you're unmuted. Okay, next we have Leslie. Leslie, you're unmuted.
Hi, thanks. Nice to see you, Jessica. Again, this is Leslie Feinberg from Supporting Our Youth and Adult Network. We have had conversations with Commissioner Neifeld about our concerns about self-direction, and this is great. This is a great thing that you've done tonight. It's a little, I'm looking for a little bit more teeth. You went over things in a very glossy kind of way. I'm looking for some more teeth for each of the things. And one of the things that we asked Commissioner Neifeld when we met with her is whether or not she's going to hold regular town hall type meetings for folks using self-direction to get some feedback on a regular basis and create an opportunity for community connections. And I was wondering if she was going to consider visiting folks on Long Island or in other places that are using self-direction, because that would really be nice to hear. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Josie, next speaker.
Sorry about the pause. Naomi, you're unmuted. You can speak.
Hello?
We can hear you, Naomi.
How do you know it's me?
Because you signed in. Just ask your question.
I got a very important question, okay?
Okay, please share.
It's life just changed for me just recently, okay? And I brought self-direction over to New York. So here's my first question. My first question about housing is
I'm unable to. Go ahead, Naomi.
I heard, can I get extra housing money under the which act I told you? American Rescue Plan Act. I heard my case manager told me I could get rent, but I own a house.
Thank you for your question, Naomi. We're unable to answer specific questions at this time, but you're able to submit them in writing. If you have any additional questions you'd like to share in the last 40 seconds of your time, please feel free to do so.
What? Agency brokers. But I need an independent.
I'm so sorry. We're having trouble hearing you off and on, Naomi. You know, we'd really
But they're all
encourage you.
agency brokers.
Yeah, you're cutting in and out. If you don't mind touching base with us outside of this call, you can give us a call or you can submit your questions in writing, and we'll be happy to answer those questions for you. Next speaker, Josie.
Young Say Bay. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong.
Oh, no, you're correct. Thank you so much for giving me the chance to talk. I have a quick question about the budget approval processes. We serve many families who have language the barriers, and the budget approval process has been very hideous and then the painful the waiting period. So, I just want to know what would be the specific strategy to streamline the budget approval processes. Secondly, the presentation include the mentioning about the technology. And we really want to see families are able to access their budget status information online. The federal money can be invested in many wonderful ways, but using technology and then giving families to access their information, their approval processes, what are the DDP2 or CAS, the budget, the score changes, that will make a lot of differences in giving more flexibility to parents as they think about what they're going to plan with the money they're going to use.
Thank you, Dr. Bay. Next speaker.
Next, we have Janet Fedicone. You're unmuted. You can speak.
Okay, great. So I'm getting a lot of feedback from my clients in reference to the new billing guidelines that came down from OPWDD. They used to have time once the budget reset date. So I had a client whose budget reset May 1st. They didn't enter their invoices until May 2nd. And they unfortunately took those funds out of the new budget that started May 1st, rather than taking them out of the budget that ended April 31st for trips and respite that was done in March. So do you know why that change was made? That's not a good change.
Yeah, so we're unable to answer specific questions at this time, but like I said, if you submit questions in the chat or via email, we will get to everybody's questions. But given the number of people that are speaking this evening, we'd prefer to let people provide comments this evening. And then, if you have questions, you can submit them in writing and we'll be responsive.
Okay.
So if you have any additional comments, feel free. You have another minute left.
Oh, no, I just have questions, so I'll do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Lisa Fleischer, you're unmuted.
Oh, yes, thank you. Lisa Fleischer, I'm also a family member and an advocate from Soyin in Long Island. I have actually 3 points that I want to make that I'm actually very happy to hear that you are addressing. First has to do with the streamlining of the budget. Both, I'm assuming the initial approval of it, but I'm hoping that that streamlining of budget approvals will have to do with the budget modifications, including the cost neutral budget amendments, which are still extremely cumbersome. I've worked on lots of state and federal grants where if you had money within a category, it was really easy to move it to another similar category. And now you can't move anything towards the end of a budget period unless you do this very cumbersome CNBA, which is in effect almost like a full budget amendment. The second point that I wanted to, so I'm hoping that you'll really look at simplifying that. The second thing that I'm so pleased is that you are looking to increase the community of practice for brokers. A zillion years ago when we were first developing CSS and we're developing the idea of brokers, that was very, very important to those of us that were working on those initiatives, that brokers have good opportunities for community of practice among brokers, because brokers are really the backbone to so much that we do in self-direction. And the third thing that I want to talk about is the sustainability issue. And there are several people who have been really pushing this, including models of enhanced brokering. And we had heard that there were going to be some model projects that might be funded out of the federal funds that had just started, but we haven't seen any RFPs on that. So I hope that the people that have been talking about it from the beginning, meeting with the commission and meeting with other groups, stakeholder groups, really hear some opportunities that can be forthcoming for those enhanced brokerage projects. And my time is up. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Next, we have Christine. Welcome. You're unmuted and you can begin.
Hi. My question is, if my self-direction is like taken away from me, how do I reapply? How long would that take?
Christine, what we can do is if you have specific questions about your circumstances, if you touch base with us, we can help you offline to answer those questions. Do you have any other comments you'd like to share this evening?
No, I mainly have a lot of questions.
Okay. Yeah, so if you connect with us with the email I shared, then we'll be able to go through those questions with you, or you can give us a call.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Next speaker, please.
We have Janet Fedicone.
Hi guys, I'm back. I do have 2 suggestions to make. The one is the mileage when we're going to be returning to face-to-face meetings. Some brokers have clients that live in other counties. So to go to a different county for a half an hour life plan meeting and not be able to bill mileage is kind of not really feasible. And the other comment is for the market rate amount in the self-direction budgets for people that have housing subsidies. That hasn't been raised for years, and it doesn't change even if it's $800 or more. So I think that needs to be looked at, and an actual current market rate needs to be increased in that section.
Great, thank you for your comments. Next speaker,
Next we
please.
have Lynn Decker. Lynn, you're unmuted.
Thank you. My comment is in the agency's website on the different projects that are to be use American Rescue Act plan monies, such as this project. I really want to encourage you to be more detailed about this particular consultancy. What is the amount to be spent? What is the identity of the grantee when that is determined? What will be their scope of work? What will be their deliverable? And what will be the timeline for those projects, as well as any opportunities for people to give input to those processes, such as tonight. But I noticed that you haven't introduced who that consultant is, so perhaps that hasn't been identified yet. But as you know these things, please publish them in the ARPA section of the agency website.
Great, thank you. Next speaker.
Next we have Svetlana. You're unmuted. You can begin.
Hi, Svetlana Kvatikova here. I'm actually a special educator. I work for early intervention as well as CPSC, and I work with the special needs population in Brooklyn and Queens and the tri-state area. So my own child has a very rare syndrome. So I signed up for OPWDD, and everything is really, really new to me. And I found it to be a little bit, challenging to get some feedback from like the care coordinator. I had to switch care coordinators, and I think it would be very helpful if maybe each OPWDD agency had their own like self-direction personnel that would be able to help and guide, newcomers, especially people like, that have educational backgrounds that want to help other families, because, I'm very passionate about my job. I love what I do. I love helping other people. And the more knowledge and information I get about OPWDD, I would love to spread it to other, other individuals like parents with autism. After the child ages out from early intervention, I would like to have some resources on OPWDD, but I just found it to be very challenging to kind of navigate this program, because it's just I get a lot of running around, and even about OPWDD, I have to hear it from colleagues, and still the only person that really helped me was like from parent to parent. The woman was so knowledgeable and resourceful and was able to guide me and help me throughout this whole process. So I think it would be very helpful if maybe OPWDD can find like knowledgeable people and maybe ensure that each agency has those staff members available on in the program, so that way they can kind of guide the newcomers, the onboarding individuals, so that they will have more support and be able to navigate and share their feedback to others as well. I think that's pretty much my whole kind of experience with OPWDD. It's been very different. Like everything I had to do everything on my own, but at the same time I would like a little more support and navigating the system for my child, and as well as for other people that I work with.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing this evening.
Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
We have Melody Walton. You're unmuted.
Hi, everyone. My name is Melody. My daughter, Erica, who is 23 and she has Down syndrome. I'm new to the program, but I am not new to the teachings of self-direction. So Svetlana, I definitely understand what she's talking about. What I wanted to say was the challenging part is I am a retired mom. So I don't have a lot of money, but in order for me to spend the money, I have to have the money in order to get reimbursed. So that's where the challenge comes in. And the reimbursement process is pretty long. My broker gets paid every month. No problem. I sign her invoice, done. But no, my reimbursement, it takes forever. 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. There's no set time. That's the first thing. My second thing I wanted to say, the closing budget. I found it to be absolutely small. If you're asking or saying the goal is you would like to immerse your child or the adult person into the community, how are you going to do that with no clothes? How are you going to use the transportation budget that you give me? No clothes. The clothing budget was the lowest part of the entire thing. I recently got her budget amended, and so it was bumped up just a little bit more. So for that, I'm grateful. And I would change a few things, but I wouldn't change the fact that we are now in self-direction because I think it's a fantastic program. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing tonight. Next speaker, please.
Tara Sternman, you're unmuted.
Okay, thank you. I'm an independent support broker who's very passionate about self-direction. I love the program. I have a couple of comments. In this day and age, all I hear how difficult it is to find staff. Staffing is one of the biggest problems, especially since COVID. Why can't we increase the family reimbursed respite line? $3,000 seems like a very nominal sum. That's the first thing. The second thing is IDGS community classes, huge category, great category, accessed a lot by my participants, whether they're virtual or face-to-face. Why can't we increase that category? The whole category is maxed out at $32,000, but families really want more classes. And finally, and equally important, when are support brokers going to get a raise? This is ridiculous. We have not gotten a raise. I don't know the last time we got a raise. We work very, very hard. Someone mentioned we don't get paid for transportation for other counties. I'm all over the place. I don't get paid for that. But what about a raise in our rate? We work hard. We've had cost of living increases with budgets. It's time to give a raise to brokers who are well deserved.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Next, we have Angie Cuvis. You're unmuted.
Hi everyone, thank you so much. It's Angie Cuevas. Yeah, so I'm actually the regional coordinator for New York City at Parent to Parent. So I just want to thank you guys for having this. I think it's well overdue. I talk to many parents throughout the week, throughout the day, that are very frustrated with the long wait times. It starts with the eligibility, so it's a long wait time for that, and then it's carried over for the self-direction. I'm also getting a lot of feedback how care coordinators, a lot of them aren't trained to even sign and enroll people up for self-direction. So I think that the CCOs need a lot of support in that area, just the training of how to sign people up. So I think that definitely should be a focus, and I just wanted to make sure that that was mentioned because I'm seeing that a lot when I talk to parents. Thank you so much, guys.
Great, thanks, Angie. Next speaker, please.
Next, we have Karen Amana. You're unmuted.
Yes, hi. I just wanted to make a point about some thought going into crisis support. So self-direction is being pushed, onto many younger people, and I don't think there's enough, information or time being spent on some crisis supports in the self-direction program. And if circumstances change for somebody, there's no safety nets available, and it relies heavily then onto an FI who necessarily wasn't set up for something like that. So some more time and thought going into safety nets and crisis supports within the self-direction program. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Next, we have Kathleen Marafino. Bear with me one second. Unmute button just disappeared.
I have also been a support
you should
broker
be
for
unmuted.
22 years. Okay, now I am. I shall start over. Okay, I'm speaking on behalf of New York South D, as well as in the role of a parent of a 42-year-old who has been in self-direction for 22 years. I have also been a support broker for that amount of time. I want to reinforce Lisa Fleischer's comments about the whole SD budget amendment process. There's just a great deal that could be done, and we probably will be submitting some written comments to that effect. But and to the issue of sustainability, because I'm not, and we are all aging parents, but I'm an age-ed parent, and it becomes even more critical. And even the prior speaker referring to no safety nets and no crisis supports, and that is a reality. My son lives at home with me and has for almost 43 years. But what I'd like to say, just as a comment, is whether it's through the collaboration or any other process of review that OPW is doing, I would like to see them really attend to the values of clarity and communication, due process, and consistency. And the consistency particularly would be helpful in terms of streamlining all of our processes if it were imposed upon FIs and other parties as well. I mean, all the players, whether it's FIs, brokers, families, those attention to those values would be extremely helpful.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Next speaker, please.
Next, we have Kun Yang. You're unmuted.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much giving me this opportunity to speak up. Yeah, so I'm a parent for autism kids. So I think the self-direction is a great model. Yeah, definitely is better than traditional OPWDD service. But in my case, I would just echo some people already said, right? So the process to get to the self-direction is too long. So in my case, I initiated the first conversation for self-direction application is January last year. So right now it's already 1.5 years. So right now my budget is still pending. And my initial budget was submitted to Albany office like 2 months ago. So I called OPWDD office twice. Basically told me right now they only process the case at November last year for the initial budget approval. So I think it's better because they told me they receive like around 300 cases per day. So they do not have enough people to process. I really appreciate the self-direction process can be more efficient. So the other point is about the model of the self-direction, right? So we have the case manager, we have the FI, we have the broker, and also we have the OPWDD. I don't think we need so many people getting involved because some case manager is not very experienced. So every time there's a missing documentation, it will delay the case for a couple of weeks or several months. So I think it's better to just use to shorter the process. Yeah, thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your experiences with us this evening. Next speaker, please.
Maria Yeto, you're unmuted.
Oh, hello. I'm Maria Yeto. I am my regional coordinator for Parent to Parent New York State. Reside in Albany, New York, and I'm a coordinator for North Country Capital District and Hudson Valley. I was happy to hear about flexibility in what funds can be spent for, and also about training of the, care managers at CCOs and things like that. Also about rent support. My husband is a broker. He started as a broker for our son who has disability, and now he has about 15 people on his case, and about 2/3 of those are people with a with a foreign background, and it's very what we also was happy to hear about how you guys are talking about multicultural support. So this is my 2 cents. I'm just glad that you are moving in those directions and covering more populations and intend to do so. So thank you so much. And yeah, I think that's my 2 cents. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Jessica Boss, you're unmuted.
Hi, I work at one of the FIs, and something that we deal with a lot is when there are questions about services that we're looking to approve under IDGS or OTPS, we'll reach out to the individual DDROs for information. They're always very receptive and provide feedback, and it's been really helpful, but something that we've noticed is that there can often be discrepancies between what one DDRO will provide a response on versus another. We could have, for example, a class that we're unsure if it would meet self-direction criteria. We could send it to 3 different DDROs and receive 3 different answers. And that's really difficult for us and for the families who are receiving various responses and are unsure why one person is allowed to go to something and someone else isn't. And I think it would be really helpful if the DDROs were given more structured guidance with a little bit less gray area from central office as a whole as to what does and does not meet budget line criteria, so that they can provide more consistent answers across the board when communicating with the agencies and when communicating with the families.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Lina Castillo Javier, you're unmuted.
Hi. Hi, how are you? I was actually typing in my question, but this is better. My son is on the spectrum. I was approved for OPWDD. I'm doing self-direction. I found someone to do the paperwork. She goes in to the paperwork for respite. And I don't understand why the agency, they said in order to do the background, they have to provide where the person has resided for the past 27 years. Now, that person was caught off guard because she's lived in different countries, different states. And she thought it would just be 10 years past history. But then they told me that OPWDD has this rule that it has to be that many years back in order to fulfill whatever it is that they need to for the paperwork for the background check. And I just wanted to know if that was correct, because it seemed like a little exaggerated the number of years that a person has to come up from this month to this month. You have lived here in this address. A lot of us don't have that information. I've lived in many countries too, and I don't have all that information for the past 27 years. I just want to know if that is correct and if that's mandated by the OPWDD or it was just that agency that's just trying to make things difficult. I still don't have anyone for respite. Thank you.
Thank you. And for specific questions, feel free to send an email for responses. Next speaker, please.
Christy Kanageiser, you're unmuted.
Thank you. My comment today was that I'm finding it difficult with the PRAs relating directly to a DDP2, which does not account for more executive functioning, soft skills, and judgment type behaviors and issues, that it's a little bit harder to get folks out of certified settings and onto self-direction. And I was hoping that in this process that we would start talking more about having a different measure for developing the PRAs. And that is my only question, my only comment.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Amy Rothfuss, you're unmuted.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. One comment I wanted to make was I just wanted to kind of back off of who was talking about everything you said tonight. It sounded okay, but it kind of just what I kept hearing was we're going to be doing a lot of assessments of what can be done. And we're going to be doing a lot of research into what we can do in the future. And it just seems like, you know, like no actual progress is being made. It's just more of the, well, let's, you know, we're going to work on it. We're going to see. And I feel like we keep hearing that. Another comment I wanted to make, I know it's not just me, several people have said it, is budget lines, the strictness of what goes where. I know my transportation and my family reimbursed respite are usually gone. And then I'm still sitting with, you know, $17,000 in staffing because I don't use it all. And I just wish we had more control over where that money went. And that's all I wanted to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Catherine Hoy, you're unmuted.
Hi there. I wanted to echo what Svetlana had said, and then so many voices here tonight. And also there was an FI who had spoken about working with different DDROs and getting a different answer from each. I'm the director of an FSS education advocacy program, and we are very interested in serving our eligible families and students, and there's more need than ever for education advocacy. But we have had, you know, since December, more than 21 students who have requested our service and families that we can't put on our rosters. And it's painful because of the length to add the service to a budget. We are, like the speaker who had mentioned, a crisis service if your child is suspended or is otherwise not in the right placement, if it's an unsafe setting at school, even if it's just the wrong program. I think all parents here understand that things can quickly escalate to crisis levels at school, and you have to know how to use IDEA and the special education process to get that IEP meeting, and you have to know the players. We know how essential our service is. Our families know how essential our service is. And I know that brokers and FIs, when they understand what our service is and that it's not education, which I understand is not permitted, we are advocacy. And there's just so much misunderstanding. And we find we are a two-person program. We have, our contract requires us to meet certain units and serve certain people, and it's all we want to do. But we find ourselves at this point explaining a service we don't really understand. So if there were more availability for providers to also educate ourselves and to, as the FI mentioned, get some coordination about what type of service. There's been a different answer about the type of we're OTPS or if we're FSS or what we are. I understand my time is up, but I thank you for the opportunity and really look forward to some more substantive conversations on this.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Andrea Hayes, you're unmuted.
Hi, I'd like to touch on the enhanced broker role. I've been an independent broker for over 10 years and have already played this enhanced broker role. It already exists within the current support broker agreement. It's justification of loan. Constant continuing circle development, community development, staff recruitment, staff training, staff meetings, independent living, just examples. Self-direction needs to maintain flexibility, not capped on averaging broker hours across the state. OPWDD requesting additional justification outside of an already average for broker roles. Enhanced brokerage already exists in the support broker agreement. People needs and support change at a variety of times in their lives. So I'm requesting that more of a flexibility in support brokerage and more training and stability in embracing independent brokers and strength and self-direction.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Walter Hogan. You're unmuted.
I'm a parent of twin boys with Down syndrome who have been involved in a self-direction program for one of them 5 years, the other one 2 years. And it's been an absolutely fantastic success. Those two boys have blossomed into being real gentlemen in the community. They both have jobs that they continue to excel in, and it's gone really, really extremely well. The problem that we have is with the process of getting our annual budget. It never gets in on time. We have, I can't say whether the issue is with the fiscal intermediary, whether the issue is with our case managers, whether it's our issues that we have. I'm not quite sure, but we always have a problem getting it in on time. And then when it does get submitted, it takes forever for OPWDD to get it back to us. So we have coaches that are still waiting. We're now 5 months past our due date for having our budget. So we're still working off our 2021 budget. We have the raises cannot be implemented. And then they tell me when the raises are implemented, they're not retroactive. So that creates a problem because one of the successes of the program is having good coaches. And when you're a parent and not affiliated and with an agency, you don't have the capability of a recruitment like they do with their human resources department. We have to go by word of mouth and try to scrap along to find the coaches that we use. So it's difficult for me to understand why their raises are not retroactive back to the beginning of the budget. And the last thing I was interested in, the coaches training is it doesn't make any sense. The coaches are trained on how to recruit people. That's no sense. They take time to go away for the training, and then the training does not pertain to what they do in an actual job. So that needs to be relooked at. Thank you.
Thank you. Next slide, please. So that does conclude our open comment this evening. Thank you all for your participation in tonight's webinar. And thank you to those of you who shared your thoughts and experiences with us tonight in either comments or in the chat. For those who didn't have a chance to share, please feel free to submit your comments and questions via email as we noted. We do truly appreciate your time, comments, and your continued advocacy. We look forward to continuing this conversation with you in the coming months and year as we work together to improve our services for people with developmental disabilities, including our self-direction model of service delivery. So thank you again and have a great evening.